we've done a lot of the knee wedge bolo, and we've run into two, let's say, central problems, okay? So the first central problem that we're all familiar with is the knee wedge counter bolo, right? So that's if I go too deep on my knee, like I want to do a knee wedge bolo, I'm going to give my opponent the counter, okay? The other problem that we have kind of talked about but we haven't really explored yet is, let's say Adrian's down on his butt. The knee wedge bolo, it's actually a stacking bolo, okay? So it's just a way to stack it, and we're using a tight knee wedge around his thigh, okay? The stacking bolo works only when he's flat on his back, okay? So I can easily stack his legs above his head. When this happens, I'm not carrying his weight when I'm in my knee wedge bolo, okay? His shoulders is mostly carrying his hips. Okay, his hips are stacked above his head. So his hips are light, okay? When he's on his butt, sitting up, and posted on his hands, okay? I can't effectively stack his hips above his shoulders because he's got frames, okay, like buttresses. So when I try to do that, his hips become really heavy. I can't get them over his head effectively, okay? That means that I need another mechanism to be able to carry his hips. I need another way to get underneath it, okay? And that's what the basic berimbolo does, okay? The basic berimbolo is about me moving my center of gravity underneath his center of gravity, okay? So that he's kind of like a teeter-totter spinning on his hips, okay? So that's easy to do when I get underneath him, I carry his weight, and then I can start to turn him and find my hooks. Okay, so that's the idea. Now the thing is, the way that I'm going to do my basic berimbolo, I'm going to use a different wedging mechanism. It's not going to be the same knee pinch at all. Okay, if I do the same knee pinch, I'm going to expose myself to the counter knee wedge. Okay, so if I want to start to lift his hips, I have to use a completely different mechanism. The knee wedge berimbolo, the one that we looked at pretty extensively at this point, when I get inverted, okay, wait. When I get inverted, my right knee is going to pass this hip line, okay, and it's going to wedge right there. Okay, so let's turn this way. Turn your head. This is there. Yeah. See my right knee? My right knee is going to pass this hip line, and it's going to wedge right there. This wedging mechanism is like this, like a scissors. Okay, it's a very strong wedge. It's thigh to thigh and hamstring to hamstring. Okay, that's a very, very strong wedge this way. Okay, the wedge that we have to use for the basic bolo is somewhat different. Actually, stay where you were. Sorry. We are not going to cross our knee past the center line. Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to leave our knee wedged up against his hip, right here. Okay. And you'll see that by leaving this knee wedged up against his hip here, it makes that counter berimbolo for him kind of impossible. Why? So let's try, Adrian. Can you counter berimbolo for me?
Pass your foot.
Yeah, even if you can pass it, you can pass it. You guys see this? If he does this, he has no hook because his bottom hook will be below my knee. Okay? It'd be like me taking his back like this. It'd be like me taking his back like this. You see, there's no hook there. I can't get that hook, okay? So he doesn't have the leverage, and he won't be able to make a hook, okay? So now let's talk about like how we can use that knee like frame against his hip, and also make a wedge so that we can lift his hips enough to get underneath, okay? The setup here is all the same. The first part of the berimbolo is all the same, okay? I'm going to bring my shoulder to my knee. I'm going to invert, kick my foot across his hip. Right here, I'm going to make a nice strong hammer with my left foot, okay? My right foot is extended, all right? I want to make sure that when I get to this position, my right knee doesn't pass his hip line like we talked about. And I'm wedging really tight. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about this leg. This leg, I still want to be hamstring to hamstring, and I want to be the back of my knee just a little bit above the back of his knee, okay? So the back of his knee is a little bit to the left, or the outside of my wedge, okay? I want to make sure that my heel is hammering really hard into my butt. I want it so tight that I feel like I could pull him. okay, with this leg. You guys see that? So I'm actually making a bite here such that I can pull his body with it. Okay, that's really important because what I'm going to do, I'll show you in a little bit what I'm going to do with that. Okay? So that's this leg. It's a bite. Now, this leg is at his hip, my knee, just at his hip, not passing his hip line. Okay? I have an outward tension with my knees. My right knee, the one that's this one right here, is pushing into his hip, okay, towards his belly. My left leg, in addition to hammering, is pulling outward. The idea is here that I'm trying to stretch, okay, like this. I want to put that tension in an outward fashion, as well as a bite here and a knee in his hip, okay? That tension is what I'm going to use to kind of like clamp onto him, okay? So I want you guys, as a drill, to start here, do all this, get to that belt line. If you can't get this drawstring, just grab the belt, okay, it's fine. We're going to invert. Kick your foot to the far side of his hip. Make sure your knee doesn't pass his hip line, okay? And then I want you to bite with this leg. It looks silly and it feels awkward at first, okay, because this leg is so hammered and this leg is so stretched, okay? Then I want you to practice putting outward pressure between your knees in outward directions, okay? And so you should feel tension. Your opponent should feel tension too, kind of like you're trying to pull this leg out of his hip socket, okay? And then start over. De la Riva, pushing the leg out, grabbing the belt, bring the shoulder down to the knee, invert, kick to the far hip, and then look, we're going to make a nice tight bite just above the knee, hamstring to hamstring. This knee is going to push into his hip. This leg is going to pull out, okay? There's outward tension. Okay, let's go. Ready? 1, 2, 3. What we want to do is we want to practice trying to get his weight first up onto our shoulder, okay? When I invert like this, there's a really good chance that my shoulder is going to be kind of in a distance from his hip, okay? So let's see, let's turn it here. You're going to get to the position and your shoulder is going to be a distance from his hip, okay? If you can't see what I mean, you're going to have to come into this area right here. So if I try to finish this bolo from this position, I'm going to have to be lifting. It's like trying to take a bucket from over here that's filled with water and trying to lift it from here above, okay? So you can see that because it's far away, there's leverage here that I'm trying to overcome, okay? So what I want to do is, ideally, I pull the bucket close to my shoulder and then I can lift it from here, okay? So remember, elbows tight is always stronger than elbows away from my ribs. Okay? So when we get to this position, here like this, what I want to do is I want to use this wedge first to pull at his hips close to my shoulder. Okay, like that. So now I've moved essentially the bucket closer towards my body and I'm not dealing with weight way out here. Okay? The other thing that it's going to allow me to do here is it's going to allow me to take this hand and I can start to come around the back of his back. Okay, kind of like underneath his body. This hand, what I'm going to do with it next is I'm going to try and go to his hamstring on the far leg. Okay, so now what's happening is I'm starting to get closer to his center of gravity. I've got a nice wedge here and it's loaded like a spring. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this whole system, my hands and my legs and everything, I'm going to try and carry his weight up onto my chest like this. Okay, you guys see that? So now I've gotten effectively my center of gravity underneath his center of gravity, okay? So again, I'm here like this, his hips are far away, okay? So I'm gonna use my wedge in my hands to pull that close to my shoulder, here, okay? I'm gonna set my hand on his hamstring and my hand around the back of his back, okay? I'm gonna use my legs and my hands. I'm gonna go like this. I'm gonna take my legs and my hands, I'm gonna pull him up on top of me, okay? So that his center of gravity is right on top of my center of gravity. Okay, so in this position, I'm going to just do this. Take his weight off. Okay, see, so now his center of gravity is on top of me. I carry all his weight on top of me. His chest is like going onto my chest, or his butt is going onto my chest. I want you guys to notice something. This leg right here, my left leg, I start to bring his hamstring, the one that I grabbed, I start to bring it on top of my shin on my left side. Okay, so I'm carrying his weight right on top of me, and I'm loading his leg onto the back of my shin. You guys practice getting to this position, okay? So remember, pull the bucket close to your chest. And then reach and bring everything right on top of your chest. Okay? Sound good? So 1, 2, 3. Once you stack up his weight, you're starting to get that shin carrying his hamstring. We're going to use that as like a crab hook. Okay, that's going to be sort of our first look at crab hook. Okay, so we get to this position. All right, we're going to make sure that we're pulling everything up into our shoulder, switching. We're going to start to carry that weight by raking his weight up on top of us. And this is what I'm talking about right here, okay? So we're gonna start to use our crab hook right here. You guys can make this crab hook by going, let's go back to right here, okay? So I get to this position, I'm gonna start loading his hamstring up onto my shin. Right now my shin is super perpendicular. What I wanna do is, I wanna start to turn my shin a little bit more parallel with his leg, okay? So I'm gonna come down like that. You guys see this? I want you to notice something. What I'm doing here with this knee, I'm clamping it inwards to his thigh, and I'm pronating my foot outwards, okay? I'm putting a wedge into this leg, all right? So this is kind of like our surrogate for a twister hook or a knee wedge clamp, okay? It's another type of control we can use as a surrogate for the twister hook or the knee wedge. It's the first time we look at it, but it's super useful, and it's gonna pop up a lot in our future, okay? Once we find this nice clamp on this hip here, I'm gonna go 2 hands to his hips. Remember, this hand was already around his back. This one's gonna come 2 to 1, 2 on 1 for a second. This hand's gonna reach up to his collar, and I'm gonna use this to carry his weight, okay? I want to carry his weight into my hip as I sit up, all right? I'm gonna push this hip hand in between my legs. I'm gonna use this collar to pull my chest tight to his back. Once I get to this position, again, I'm gonna uppercut underneath his armpit, and then this hand's gonna stab him in the chest. I'm gonna go pinky to hand to pinky, and then I'm gonna come back to this position right here. Okay? And this position we use to crack the nut with the second hook. Okay, so let's do it again. Let's face this way. Okay, so I'm gonna pull him close, start to rake his weight on top of me, bring my shin behind his hamstring. Okay? And then what I want to do is I want to try and make sure that I'm getting a nice wedge with my foot. I'm going to go 2 to 1, and then I'm going to come up to his collar as I'm sitting. And I want to try and sit up when I do that. Okay? I'm extending my crab leg at the same time that I'm pushing his hip into my lap. Okay? When I get here like this, I'm using this hand to pull my chest tight to his back. Here like this. Uppercut, stab him, cover your pinky knuckle. We're going to go back, cross our ankles to control that top hip. Remember guys, when we cross our ankles, we don't want to be below the butt. Okay, now his butt can move that way. And you can start coming up on us. We want to keep that butt down. Cross our ankles here. Now we can stretch. Use that to tighten up for a second. There we go. Stretch. Okay, let's try. Ready? 1, 2, 3.